So you're worried about online scams getting worse with the holidays coming up. And you know what? That's not just you being paranoid. That's a real thing.
Yeah, it's true. Scams definitely spike this time of year.
This security expert's newsletter I was reading actually calls it "'Tis the Season for Scamming." Pretty catchy, right?
It is catchy, but unfortunately it's accurate too. There's just so much more money flying around with gifts and everything. People are in that giving mood, feeling generous and maybe letting their guard down a little.
Right. And I feel like, especially with holiday shopping, you're also more likely to be looking for a deal. So maybe you're not as careful about where you're buying from.
Exactly. They know everyone's looking for the perfect gift at the perfect price, and they exploit that. It's all about that urgency.
So it's almost like they're taking something good, like our generosity and our holiday spirit, and using it against us.
That's a good way to put it. Like, think about those fake GoFundMe campaigns. They're awful any time of year. But then imagine one about a sick child needing surgery popping up right before the holidays.
Oh gosh, my heartstrings. Don't even say it.
But that's what they do. They prey on your emotions when you're already feeling generous and more likely to donate without doing a ton of research.
That's just wrong. Okay, so we know scammers are out there, and they're only getting sneakier, especially around the holidays. We want to make sure you don't fall victim to their tricks, which is why we're doing this deep dive today. We've got your questions, plus some really interesting insights from this expert's newsletter. And we're also going to see what Facebook itself has to say about this.
Which, by the way, if you've ever looked at Facebook's Help Center, it's full of warnings about scams.
Oh, it totally is. Like, even Facebook knows they have a problem.
Right.
So speaking of Facebook, you mentioned the fake GoFundMe pages. What other kinds of scams should people be looking out for there? Especially since so many of us do our holiday shopping online now.
Well, one thing Facebook warns about a lot is these fake online stores popping up. It makes sense when you think about it. You're scrolling through your feed and boom, there's an ad for something you really want.
Yeah, like that new video game console everyone's trying to get their hands on.
Exactly. Or like the latest smartphone. But it's being offered at a price that seems way too good to be true.
And that's when you have to stop and think.
Right.
Because it probably is too good to be true.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement, especially during the holidays. But that's exactly what these scammers are hoping for. They want you to click without thinking.
So how can you tell if an online shop is fake? Like, what are some red flags to watch out for?
Well, the name of the website is a big one. It might be really similar to a brand, but with a slight misspelling. Or the URL might look a little off, like using a .net instead of a .com.
Oh, that's so sneaky.
It is. And sometimes the website itself can look really convincing. They might even steal the design and logos from the real brand.
So basically what you're saying is, just because a website looks professional doesn't mean it is.
Exactly. And this is where phishing comes in. We were talking about that earlier, remember?
Right. I wanted to circle back to that because we found some really interesting stuff on Wikipedia about it.
Yeah, phishing isn't just about those emails from a Nigerian prince anymore.
Definitely not. So for people who don't know, can you explain exactly what phishing is and how it works?
Sure. So phishing is basically a way of tricking people into giving up personal information like their passwords or credit card details. And they do it by disguising themselves as a trustworthy source, like that fake online store we were talking about. That's a prime example of phishing.
So these scammers create a fake website that looks real, and then when you enter your credit card information to buy something, they steal it.
Exactly. And they can use that information to make fraudulent purchases or even steal your identity. And the thing is, with these fake online shops, you might not even realize you've been phished until it's too late.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Especially because we do so much shopping online these days. And it's not just about fake websites, right? It can happen through emails and text messages too.
Yeah, absolutely. You might get an email that looks like it's from your bank or a credit card company asking you to update your account information. But if you click on the link, it takes you to a fake website designed to steal your login details.
It's like they're always finding new ways to trick us.
They are. And unfortunately, it's only getting harder to spot these scams because they're using AI now to make them even more convincing.
Wait, AI as in artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
Like the same technology that powers those chatbots?
The very same.
Yeah.
And according to this expert's newsletter, it's a game changer for scammers.
Okay, so how are they using AI to create these scams? Tell me more about that.
Well, one way is by creating hyper-realistic phishing websites that are almost impossible to distinguish from the real deal. They can even use AI to generate fake reviews and testimonials to make the website look more legitimate. And here's the really scary part. They can use AI to personalize the scams too.
Personalize how?
So remember how we were talking about how much information people share online?
Oh no, I'm already scared.
Well, scammers can use AI to analyze your online activity, like your posts, your likes, your comments, even your browsing history.
Mm.
And then they use that information to create scams that are tailored specifically to you.
So they're basically creating a scam that's designed to trick me specifically.
Yeah.
That is both impressive and terrifying.
It is pretty terrifying because it means these scams are getting harder and harder to spot. You might get a message from what looks like a friend recommending a product or a website, but it's actually a scammer who's used AI to figure out what you're interested in and what kind of message is most likely to get you to click.
That is so creepy. It's like they know exactly how to push our buttons.
They do. And it's not just the shopping scams either. Remember we were talking about those fake charity scams earlier?
Right, the ones that try to take advantage of people's generosity.
Exactly. Well, scammers are using AI to make those scams more sophisticated too. They can use AI to analyze real charities and then create fake ones that look almost identical. They can even mimic the language and imagery that real charities use to make their scams even more believable.
It's like a never-ending battle to stay one step ahead of these scammers. But it feels like they always have the upper hand with all this new technology.
I know it can feel that way, but the good news is that there are still things you can do to protect yourself. It's all about being aware of the risks and taking some simple precautions. So aside from completely avoiding the internet altogether, any advice for us?
So aside from completely avoiding the internet altogether, any advice for us?
Well, the good news is a lot of it is common sense. It's more about actually remembering to do it. Like Facebook has some good tips in their help center.
Yeah, they're really pushing that two-factor authentication, aren't they? And everyone always says to use strong passwords. But I'm curious, do you have any tips for actually creating one that's memorable but also secure?
I like to use a passphrase instead of a password. It's basically just a string of random words, but it's easier to remember than a bunch of random characters. And make sure it's at least 12 characters long. Oh, and another thing, take a look at your privacy settings. It's amazing how much scammers can figure out just from a few photos or posts, you know?
It's true.
Mm.
You're right. I should probably go through and do a little privacy checkup
Yeah.
right after this. So we've talked about phishing and fake websites, but I wanted to circle back to that social media pretexting thing you mentioned earlier, because I have to admit I'm still not entirely clear on what that is.
Yeah, so it's kind of a broad term, but it basically means using social media to gather information about someone that can then be used to craft a more believable scam.
So it's not just about like hacking into someone's account or anything. It's more about using the information they share publicly to trick them.
Right, it's sneakier than that. The newsletter gave this example of what they call crimes of opportunity. So let's say you post about going on vacation.
Uh-oh, I see where this is going.
Well, now the scammer knows your house is empty. They might even be able to figure out exactly where you live based on your other posts and photos.
See, that's what freaks me out. It's like we're constantly giving away these little pieces of information without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And then someone can piece it all together and use it against us.
Exactly.
Mm.
It's all about being aware of what you're sharing and who might be watching. But it's not always about physical safety either. There's this other thing called like farming, where scammers use contests and giveaways to inflate their follower counts.
Right, you mentioned that earlier, but why does that even matter? So what if they have a bunch of fake followers?
Because then they turn around and use those inflated numbers to give their scams a veneer of legitimacy. Think about it. If you see a phishing link, but it's from an account with thousands of followers and tons of engagement, you're more likely to think it's safe.
You're totally right.
Like,
I know I would let my guard down a bit if I saw that other people were interacting with something.
that's social proof for you. We're hardwired to trust things that seem popular, so the scammers create this illusion of popularity to trick people into falling for their traps.
That's both really clever and super disturbing. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of scary stuff today. But this deep dive isn't about scaring you. It's about giving you the knowledge and tools to protect yourself. So what's the most important thing people should take away from this?
I think the biggest thing is just to be aware that these scams exist and they're getting more and more sophisticated all the time. Don't be afraid to be a little suspicious. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. And if you get a message or see a post that raises any red flags, trust your gut and don't click on anything.
That's such good advice. Trust your gut. It's really the best defense we have sometimes. Well, this has been a fascinating and slightly terrifying look at the dark side of the internet. Thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing all your expertise with us.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners out there, stay safe, stay vigilant, and have a happy and scam-free holiday season.